This is Get Back season, baby.
And we're back with another video, another episode. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. Obviously, you guys know it's Get Back season. And as you can see, we're joined with a special guest. I'd say a good acquaintance of mine so far. Like, we met in our barbers and we had like some interesting conversations. So I thought, you know what? I need to get this guy on because I feel like not only is it beneficial to network and for me to be able to ask questions, but especially for you guys that are watching, I feel like it's always insightful to learn new things, if that makes sense. So yeah, like, introduce yourself, man.
So, my name's Darren Michael. Currently working as a secondary school teacher, practitioner, primarily teaching science and PE. Also, I'm working as a middle leader within the school. So that's kind of dealing with more the sort of pastoral issues with students. So if there's any particular kind of issues they're having with their peers or any kind of issues in terms of academic subjects, they will then come to speak to me. I kind of sort of liaise between them and the members of staff, so it kind of helps them have a voice really, so that they're not kind of feeling too frustrated, and feeling as though they've not got an outlet. On the side of that, I'm currently delving into property, and I know we'll touch on that a little bit later in the conversation. Also, a fitness enthusiast. I worked for the past 10 years on and off as a personal trainer. Started out originally working in gyms and health clubs, and then I've kind of gone freelance, so working individually with clients, either at their premises or in sort of local parks. So yeah, kind of like an all-round sort of mentality really, and just kind of trying to get as much exposure now. Definitely branching out to kind of see what can work in the future really.
No, that's sick. That's sick. Like, again, like, thank you for your time. Like, we've been trying to get this podcast filmed for like 2 weeks.
Easily.
And like, I've been mash up. Like, when I mean mash up, I've been finished. And every time, like, I felt bad. Like, the first time I booked it, I was there, like, I think I cancelled like a day before. I was like, yeah, I'm finished. I'm kalas. And then I said, yeah, we'll rebook for next week. And then the following week, I lost my voice. So literally, I'm so glad, like, this week, we're actually able to come together and hopefully have a good conversation.
Definitely.
But I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for coming through.
I appreciate having me.
But one thing I want to start doing now, like, it sounds weird, but I actually want to start asking people, like, that come on, how are you? Are you good?
Generally, you know, to be fair, I'm kind of one of those people that I try to be resilient. I know, obviously, especially in the current climate that we're sort of in now, there's a lot of issues financially. I know mental health's a major concern for a lot of people. Generally, on the whole, touch wood. I try to kind of stay in a positive mentality. Yes, obviously, I have my bad days, my days when things aren't going according to plan, and you have those kind of stresses. But I try not to let it get me down too much. Just from a standpoint of my mentality now is kind of like where, depending on whatever environment you're in or kind of headspace, kind of having a pity party. I know for some people that might seem a little bit harsh or may seem a little bit ignorant maybe to some extent, but I just feel as though regardless of whatever your situation is, you kind of have to find an outlet and try and find a way to kind of overcome those particular issues and obviously move forward. So yeah, generally I'm good, healthy, I'm living, I'm breathing. So yeah, no complaints really.
That's always good to hear, like, because I feel like a lot of the times it's a simple question, but I feel like a lot of the times it gets brushed over, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
But I totally understand you. Like, I think it's important to ask, because as you said, in the climate that we're in at this current moment, I feel like everyone's going through like their word, like, I wouldn't say word, but their individual like battles, if that makes sense. Like, when I go work on a day-to-day basis, like, different people are complaining about different things, whether it's, as you said, financial issues, or there's some people that just hate their jobs. Like, I hear it all the time, but as soon as I get into work, I don't want to be here, and stuff like that. So I feel like it's important, but I'm exactly the same. I think when it comes to a lot of things, I just keep it stepping. And two, it's just like, don't dwell into it, if that makes too much, because the more you dwell in it, it's not going to change. If that makes sense. That's just the hard truth. But yeah, it's a good thing that you.
And I think it's as well from a standpoint that I always look at it that there's always going to be someone that's in a worse off position than what I am.
100%.
So as I say, from the kind of the offset, really, health wise, no kind of health issues, family's all well. Like I say, yeah, you are going to have your individual battles that you need to kind of get through, whether it be financially, mentally. But yeah, it's kind of just about sort of striving forwards and trying to take each day as it comes. I think we can sometimes get bogged down and looking at things that are in the future, weeks or months or years. But when you kind of get into that little bit of a rut, for me personally, it works well that I just focus on, okay, well, what do I need to do today? What things do I need to put in place that have a positive day today? And then obviously we can look to tomorrow and then the future days as and when they come, really.
No, 100%. I like the mindset. So just so I remember, you're a high school teacher, right?
Yeah.
How do you deal with high school kids? Like, what is it like being a teacher on a day-to-day? Because I remember when I was back in high school, like, I was one of those kids, I'd do my work, but in a sense, I'm like, me, especially in my group, were just like a menace to society, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know that once.
What's it like, if that makes sense, being a high school teacher?
I think, to be fair, when you go into education, you generally tend to delve into one or the other. You generally tend to have a focus and want to work within a primary school setting, or it tends to be high school. I've worked in both, so I've been able to kind of have the exposure of working with the different sort of key stages and the different students. From a personal standpoint, so all of my kind of opinions are literally my own, and more so just from the experiences that I've had. I couldn't even get anything worse than working in primary school. In terms of the kids, it's a completely different mentality that you have to go into, and it's very much like you are nurturing all those kind of things we take for granted, little things, little playground squabbles.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, they still happen in high school, but it's not in the same context. But from a personal standpoint, within high school, I just feel as though the kids are more relatable. And I just feel as though I can kind of help to sort of shape and mold those particular young people and sort of move them on into the next kind of journeys with their lives that they have. I mean, there are times where you do have kind of certain situations with kids where you sort of bump heads with them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like I say, from a pastoral standpoint, understanding the way that kids work and their sort of psyche, for me, I think it's something you get with experience. Definitely from the experiences I've had with different students, it's understanding that they are all individuals. And I think sometimes we can take young people as a whole for granted in terms of assuming that they're all the same. So it's kind of like, just understanding those kids, working with them and kind of finding ways that will benefit that particular child more so than collectively.
Yeah, I think that's needed because, as you said, I feel like, especially in high school, I feel like different kids are going through different situations on a day-to-day, if that makes sense. Like, I remember sometimes I used to feel like I think most students tend to talk about it. They'd be like, some teachers just come across like they hate teaching, but they're just there for the money, if that makes sense.
100%.
You go into school and you're thinking like, the teachers they look like they hate being there. And it's just like, when you walk into the classroom or how you get spoken to sometimes, it's just like, you don't feel like, instantly you don't even want to learn, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, I kind of have these sort of battles internally. And it's probably one of my biggest frustrations, actually, when I'm working, obviously, on a day-to-day, when teachers, or certain teachers, let's say, when they kind of do have that mentality where they're automatically frustrated or they're automatically in a certain mind, like a negative mindset. Yes, there are going to be occasions, and from a personal standpoint, there's absolutely days where I don't want to be there, and there are maybe certain students that have caused certain issues that I'm having to deal with. However, I feel as though when you kind of go into teaching, you kind of have to be able to wear another face, so to speak. Because when you are having those bad days, if the kids can pick up on it, generally it's going to be more frustrating because you find that even the slightest little thing annoys you more than it would do normally.
100%.
So it's kind of like you kind of have to have a poker face. You don't want the kids to see that you're sort of annoyed or you're too frustrated, because you don't want them to play off it as well. But then again, I think if you are that member of staff that generally is able to build that level of rapport with the kids, for me anyway, they generally tend to sort of pull you up as well. And they'll understand if there are certain times where you are a little bit down or you are a little bit annoyed, they'll kind of work with you rather than against you. But again, I think that's how you kind of build those relationships in the first instance.
Yeah, it's ultimately like, as you said, it's down to the relationships, because like some kids, I think the stronger bond that you have with like your pupils and stuff like that, it not only helps you but helps them, because then they'll either feel comfortable to come to you about certain things in the sense of lessons. Like there's so many times I remember I could be in school focusing on a lesson, and I may not understand something, but because that teacher already is a bit snappy or a bit cranky, at the end of the lesson, I'm probably not going to ask, or I'm not going to ask for somewhat help.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like, as you said, once you build like a certain understanding with certain students or with your students, they feel more open to at least come to you and say like, look, I need more help with this. I need more help with that.
Yeah.
So in regards to like the learning then, like, do you come across like different learning types? Because I think that was one of the things that I definitely wanted to speak about, because you know how they say, I think you have like the more creative people, and then you have like, let's just say, the quote unquote book smart kids, if that makes sense. I feel like, do you come across like, are you able to identify them? Like as a teacher, are you able to be in your class, and especially if you're marking work or whatnot, can you identify and be like, okay, this guy or girl is a bit more creative, but this one's a bit more book smart?
Yeah, I mean, from an academic standpoint, there are a lot of amazing tools that we do use in classrooms now. So we'll have pupil profiles. If a particular student might have an additional special educational need, all of those things are documented. So obviously, it's kind of assumed really that as a member of staff, whichever class you're teaching, that you understand the kids that you've obviously got in front of you. So there will be certain students that maybe tend to benefit more so from verbal or auditory or kinesthetic, where they're actually having to practically do things. But you kind of shape and mold it as and when the certain students that you've got, and depending on what's being taught. Again, from some of the lessons with PE, for example, I'll have theory lessons, but I'll also have practical. So there'll be certain students that practically they can access the content, they're able to excel. But then on a theory standpoint, I might then have to change the teaching strategy to be able to suit that type of need. And I think for some of the frustrations, I think some staff members sometimes have, is that they're not always able to kind of adjust to those kind of issues and those sorts of problems. I mean, then there'll be a certain student they think's being difficult, but often students aren't generally difficult just for the sake of it. Yes, obviously, you will have the odd one or two that do, but generally, when students are difficult, there's generally an underlying reason, whether they're not able to access the content, they're not buying into the subject as a whole. That's a massive thing. I think a lot of teachers have to try and overcome. Because again, especially with the exposure that young people have to social media now, education is even more difficult, because kids have this idea that they see certain things on social media and it's kind of like the champagne lifestyle and feeling as though
100%.
it's easy to get to it, and there's no sort of steps to get to that process. So there are a lot of curveballs and variables that you kind of have to employ. But I think that kind of comes with the art of teaching. That's, for me anyway, I think that's what we're expected to do. There's no point if I've got a class of 30 kids and I'm basically trying to teach them all using the same strategies, the same formulas, I'd be doing them a disservice. So yeah, I think that the staff members that generally sort of take that to heart, they'll make sure that they can embed the appropriate sort of measures for those kids, really.
I think that's good, because I remember like when I was a bit younger and I was going to school, I often felt like there wasn't much like out there for different, like, luckily I've always been one of those kids that I'm good book smart and I'm good more like as well creatively, but sometimes it's like the way they would put things or the information that's out there, it's not brought to you in a sense of that you feel, it's not brought to you in a sense of that you feel like you can receive it well. That makes sense. Like sometimes it feels like exams, for example. Like I remember when I was younger, everything is more like mainly like exam based. And like when I first came from Jamaica, I remember even like my reading standards was like years behind. I remember like it was years behind compared to the English system. And I struggled for a bit, but I feel like I'm glad that you're at least saying that there's things in place now that you can kind of diverse certain subjects in order to suit the child, if that makes sense, or the kid or the student. Because I feel like back when I was back in high school, there wasn't much out there. And as you said, even down to like social media, as you said, with kids now, I could only imagine how hard it is, because I have one of my other friends, he's a teacher as well, and he spoke to one of his students the other day, and he was like, what do you think's the average wage in the UK? They were like, oh yeah, 40k, 50k, 60k. So like, yeah, when I get out of here, I'm just gonna get into a job and earn 50k. And he was there like, the level of like illusion that they're in at times because of social media. As you said, they see the end life, they see, I don't know, certain people posting, as you said, the champagne lifestyle, and it's just like it's not like that, if that makes sense. Do you feel like school put enough, or at least put enough effort into teaching kids, or at least like exposing them to a different perspective in order for them to learn and say like, you have, like, it's down to the work that you put in, if that makes sense?
I think yes and no. I think social media, to be fair, is probably one of the biggest external kind of factors that we're having to constantly be battling against. I mean, the majority of the kind of pastoral issues and problems that I deal with on a day-to-day, 9 times out of 10 stems from social media, whether it be a group chat. I mean, even for me now, I'm kind of still learning and understanding the way that social media operates. I mean, apps like Snapchat. My understanding of Snapchat is you take a picture, send it to someone, and that's literally it. But now when I'm speaking to the kids, they're like, Snapchat story, private story, and locations, and this, that, and the other. And to me, it just seems like a complete sort of minefield. So those distraction mechanisms are definitely a huge hindrance for young people. Within education as a whole, I definitely think there's certain areas that do need to be hugely looked at. The kind of inspection process that we still use, in my personal opinion, it's outdated. The fact that you'll have an Ofsted inspection and you'll have some random inspectors who've never seen your school, don't know the kids, don't know the demographic, the understanding of the school environment on a day-to-day, will come into your school, assess or observe certain lessons and the way that you do things over maybe a 3 or 5 day period, go away then and then write a report that can stay with you for years, 2, 3, 4 years afterwards. I mean, and those kind of reports, they can have serious sort of damage for the school, depending on what the kind of outcome is or how they've rated that particular school as a whole. And just the general structure, I mean, I kind of do have that battle with the kids at times. I'm definitely an advocate for being open, honest, and transparent with the kids. So I'll never I'll sugarcoat certain things. But for example, if one of the kids comes up to me and says, "Sir, why are we learning about protons and electrons in science?" And I'll be honest with them and say, well, you have to be kind of worldly, so to speak, and you have to understand different subjects. However, I would agree with you that yes, there is certain content that maybe isn't going to be beneficial for everyone. I do 100% feel that there are certain things that we need to employ into the curriculum now. Just general life skills. I mean, kids nowadays, they'd struggle to be able to structure a CV or how to conduct themselves in terms of like an interview, or how to kind of present yourself in that presentable manner. So there are a lot of areas that I don't feel as though we are including, which does a disservice to the kids. I mean, obviously from us going to school, we would have experienced the same thing as well. So yeah, there's positives within obviously the school and educational system. I definitely wouldn't turn around and be like, yep, we just need to rip the whole thing up and every child should be homeschooled and that should be the end of it. But definitely I do feel that having certain levels of dialogue with different people from different demographics and different sort of realms of life is only going to benefit the kids in the long run.
No, 100%, because as you said, like, one, the demographic is understanding the demographic of kids that you do have is very important, because obviously Black, white, Asian, like, it's very important to understand, because each of those kids are coming from different backgrounds. They're learning in different ways. They're used to certain things. So the fact that you can be diverse with it and be able to appeal to them in an educational way is important. But then also the point that you touched on, in the sense of what I feel like, I do agree with you, I feel like they should focus on a bit more, because as focusing on like the science part and protons and electrons, like I think I was one of those students I'd probably ask that question, like, why do I need to learn it?
Exactly,
whereas I understand now that I've got older, it like having just like certain general knowledge of certain things, it allows you to be a bit more, I don't know, like diverse, especially when you're having day-to-day conversations. You can conversate with anyone, but the thing that I do agree as well is in the sense of certain things when I look back on now, thinking I've never used like pi, circumference of pi, like 3.14. No one's ever asked me that question. I've never gone to anyone and used it, but it's understandable. I think it all makes sense depending on what field you want to go into. Like, because there's some kids that probably want to go down into like a, I don't know, accounting route or a maths route or a science route. So obviously it's going to benefit those kids.
Yeah.
But I feel like the one thing that I think schools should focus on a lot more, as you said, is more of like the general things to survive. So like CV. I remember I was terrible with my CV. Even now, like I think I get a lot of help from different people. Shout out Nikita for helping me with my CV. But I get a lot of help from different people with that because I struggle with it. Interviews, again, like it was. I remember my first ever job I had at River Island, and it may sound stupid, but I didn't know because it's a clothing store. I thought maybe I should turn up in like jeans and a t-shirt or something. And I remember I phoned my auntie that same day, and I was like, "Okay, auntie, I got an interview. Like, what do I need to wear?" And I was like, it's a clothing store, and she was like, "You still need to like wear a suit, like still wear like smart trousers, whatnot." Yeah. And I was like, "Are you sure?" Like, but it's a clothing store.
But to be fair, it's funny. It's funny you say that because I mean, even with the kids and stuff today, I would say probably they're struggling 100 times more with those kind of understandings. I mean, there's certain things that we take for granted in terms of kind of how to conduct yourself and etiquette and decorum. I mean, to be fair, I'm a stickler for it. Like, it's probably, again, one of my biggest peeves with this younger generation. And I don't necessarily blame them completely. Because I think in a lot of situations, they haven't been shown the sort of the ways to conduct themselves. I mean, it's often kind of that sort of point that some people say, well, this generation, they are kind of stemming from kids having kids in the most respectful way.
Yeah, 100%.
So in terms of the way that this generation handle themselves, they don't have that understanding. Whereas if I go to myself, for example, my parents now are in their 60s, they had me when they were in their like mid-30s.
Yeah.
They'd had life experiences, some the kind of values that they instilled in me and me obviously growing up. Is obviously, I think, different to the way that some of the younger generation are having today. But yeah, to be fair, like I'm 100% an advocate for sort of teaching kids those life skills. I think in the schooling system, and again, just from a personal opinion, I would say that there is a potential agenda. And it's almost as if kids aren't being shown, or they don't want kids to be awake and alert to the sort of things that we need in life.
100%.
Mortgages, bank accounts,
credit score,
financing, credit scores, all of those things that we know are going to impact them and impact them for years to come. It's almost like, well, we'll push that to one side because if they are aware of it, it's almost like then they're kind of be going against the status quo, and it's that kind of elitist mentality of having this group of people here and everyone else are little minions, everyone acts as an employee and basically funding those particular select few.
I'm glad you said that because I've always, like, weirdly enough, I've always had that perspective, especially like from a young age, because I was growing around, like, I was a perfect example. Like, my mom had me young, but I was a perfect example of like when they say it takes a village to raise a child. I would chill. Obviously, a lot of the times I was never around people my age. I was around like the older lot. I was around Rastas. I was around like whole bunch of older like people, so I was able to like learn and grasp off them. And one thing I always like had my mind on, especially when I started going to school, because even like I remember one time I used to like sell sweets and stuff in school, like make money and stuff like that. And before I did that, there used to be a kid that used to do that, and he got in trouble for selling sweets. And I used to think to myself, like, as I got older, I passed that same like advice to my younger brother. So he started selling school and sweets, but he started doing it in a different level. Like, he was getting kids in the lower years to sell sweets for him. Then he started branching out to other schools. And I remember one time I used to drive down to London, go visit him. Random kids are coming to the house. I'm thinking, where are these kids? Like, they're high school. I was like, why are these random kids coming to? They're like, oh, they're coming to pick up the stock to go and sell on Monday. I was like, what the hell?
But then it's crazy because then, like I say, I mean, even now that can't happen in schools.
This is what I'm saying.
So it's almost like we're kind of crushing that sort of entrepreneurial spirit. And then will sort of mask it as, well, you're doing something that's quote unquote illegal. And it's kind of like, well, if you have a product that you've bought and then you decide you want to go and sell it and you're selling it for more, how is that any different to what all shops do? All shops will buy a product for a certain price, put the price up, upsell, so they'll make a profit.
Yeah.
But we'll kind of tell kids that that's wrong and that's something they shouldn't be doing. And as I say, I do generally feel that there is obviously certain agendas as to why those sorts of things happen.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's almost like we're kind of in this society where we kind of want to pigeonhole the majority.
100%.
I mean, and sort of without going off on like tangents, but just from different things that I've kind of seen, experienced, and looked into, it does make more sense now when you look at the kind of the disparity between certain people in society.
It's like a pyramid.
And the general public, so to speak. I mean, they're living a certain lifestyle and they're able to do X, Y, and Z. Meanwhile, the little minions at the bottom are like sort of rummaging around and fighting for the crumbs that's down there. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Crabs in a bucket. But I remember like one time he must have got in trouble and my mum called me and she was like, oh yeah, he's in trouble. I was like, what is he in trouble for? They're like, oh, they caught him selling sweets, blah blah blah, his bag was full of sweets. And I said to him, I remember I went down to London and then I had a meeting with the teachers and stuff, well, the head teacher, and I said to them, I was like, I understand it's quote unquote wrong to sell, but I was like, can't he have like some sort of agreement with you guys? So even let's just say he makes £50 throughout the week, is he able to like give you guys a certain amount of profit or something from it? Like, so that way it's like he's literally paying you to allow him to sell, if that makes sense. They still weren't having it. And then I started just thinking a bit deeper and I was like, but that's like the first step. If you speak to like a lot of like these business people, entrepreneurs now, that was like their first entry level thing. Selling Lucozade, selling Pepsi, selling chewing gum and whatnot. And it's just like you're crushing someone else's like their start. And as you said, I feel like there is certain agendas because it's more of a thing where I feel like schools kind of are shaped in a way to build more of an employee mindset, if that makes sense.
100%.
So the moment you kind of step out of that, all the way through like high school, A level and all of those stuff, I feel like it's nurturing you to get used to a 9 to 5. It's like if you think of it, you got break time. Now, break time is like, 15 minutes or whatnot, 10 minutes. And then you only have lunchtime. You're meant to eat at a certain time. Then you go home.
Yeah.
They're setting you up to work in the work, because now work is 9 to 5. You go in the office, you get probably a 30-minute break. Some people are lucky and get an hour, but 30-minute break. And then back to work. You sit around the desk or whatever you're doing, and then you go home for this certain amount of time, and then you do it over again.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this is like the way they've like orchestrated it. It's just like mindlessly working each and every day.
It's kind of like you sort of drip feed in that sort of mentality, because I mean, even now for me, and as I say, don't get me wrong, I love exactly what I do, love teaching, love the impact and the sort of relationships that I'm able to build and help mould in these young kids into sort of whatever kind of aspirations they have.
Yeah.
But even now, if I have a conversation with someone, I say, right, this is my 9 to 5 at the moment. I love what I'm doing. However, I've got the property thing on the side. Yeah. As soon as I start explaining certain strategies or certain ideas and certain things are going to be put in place, automatically that kind of employee mindset kicks in. And it's almost like those people who are close to you, whether it be friends or family, immediately have that kind of whole shutdown of, oh, that's risky. Yeah. You don't want to do that. That's dangerous and you could be at risk. And then I look at it and think, okay, let's look at it from a common sense standpoint. It's risky going into business or going into these particular things. Yeah. But how is that any riskier than you taking out a loan that you're going to be paying off for the next 40 years, where you know I have to make sure that I'm paying that particular mortgage, otherwise it's going to be taken away from me. 100%. Whereas if I have a business venture that, okay, is going to need a certain level of capital to begin with, but you're going to start off with a smaller amount, in the worst case scenario, things don't go according to plan, you kind of wrap things up and you kind of maybe venture into something else, or you just stop.
That's it.
But when we have these other things like mortgages, which we're going to basically have for life, working a 9 to 5, I mean, I have conversations with the family like all the time now. I said, to me, that is one of the key examples that you can use for a definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Working for 40 years, to end up getting 40% of your total earnings in your pension, which you're going to get 40% taxed on, for literally to oversee the last part of your life. And it's like, why work for 40, 50 years when you can only then theoretically enjoy 10 years, which, to be fair, you're not really going to be enjoying anyway. It makes no sense. So then when someone has an idea to want something more, and to kind of remove themselves out of that kind of rat race of doing a norm, I don't understand why you would obviously want to sort of kill that person's dream. But I do understand it, because, again, we're programmed. It's almost that, right, go to school, get good grades. When you get good grades, then go to college, then go to university, get a decent job with good pensions, be a good employee and stay there for 50 years. Because that's what, again, the system was created for that. It wasn't created for entrepreneurs. It wasn't created for everyone to have aspirational wealth. In my opinion, it was a case of, right, we want this group of people to be here. They're the ones that are going to be sort of having all of the positives, and everyone else just going to be at the bottom and just doing all of the menial things that people do on a day-to-day.
No, you couldn't have said it any more, like, on point, if that makes sense. Because, as you said, I think anytime when it comes to business, or you even say the word business, as the first thing that people relate business to, it's a risk. I'm thinking I see it more as a risk to live life on a day-to-day for the next 40, 50 years, doing the same thing. And then, as you said, you wait on a pension. Let's just say you budget all your life. In order to survive, you budget whatnot. You're not spending lavishly. You work in order to get this so-called pension. But then even when you get this pension, you're not going to be living a lavish, mad life. No. You're still going to have to budget as well in order to survive. So I'm thinking, hold on, I'm spent 40 years working. I'm going to now spend another 20 or 30 years, however long I need to live, to now budget my life in order for me to survive. To die. And I was thinking, what the hell? Yeah. Like, I always say this. I said it to someone the other day. I think it was one of either my friends or my work colleagues. I said, there's 365 days in a year. Normal 9 to 5s, we literally get, 25 days of so-called holiday. Who said that was a good deal, if that makes sense? That was literally a shit deal.
And I think, like, from that kind of point, and just sort of making reference to the kind of way that we kind of programmed again, to live our lives and whatnot. It's almost like that's just accepted as the norm now, and it's only, I think, like a certain group of people or certain people who have a certain mindset to kind of break out of that mold where they think to themselves, hold on a second, that doesn't seem like that's something that I'd want to have for the rest of my life. Why would I want to be sort of killing myself for 40 years, and then the money that I'm going to be living off in my pension is going to be pennies anyway? I'd rather go out and do something where I can maybe live a better life or more comfortable life for myself and for my family, and at least have tried, rather than, because at the end of the day, the blueprint's already there. We already know what will happen if 100%. You don't go down that route. You're going to be working. You're not going to have much to show for it when you retire. Especially with the way that the kind of finances are and stuff now, people are even more in a worse situation and position.
Exactly.
So it's almost like you already know what that guaranteed outcome is. Okay, so how about I try and think of it from a different angle or different perspective and see where that particular ends up. That's, as I say, that's my mindset. And again, I do get it. I understand why a lot of people don't necessarily have that. But I think there is the exposure now. There's a lot more information. I mean, that was kind of what started getting my attention in the first place, and it was almost like seeing a particular video or reading a particular book, which I'm a huge advocate for, kind of opens your eyes and then thinks, well, okay, maybe there's a different way of doing things, and maybe doing this is not the way that I want. I mean, my dad, he works as an electrician, came over from the Caribbean when he was 8, started work when he was 15. He's now 66 and he's only just retired. So he's 66 and just retired, but he's not comfortable. He's not like he's retired and he can kind of go on holidays here and there and he can do all these things. He's just comfortable in the sense of he doesn't have to work. And you see everyone in terms of family and friends around who are kind of within that same sort of realm. And I don't know, like, I just think it's, for me personally, I don't want that. I don't want it to, I want to have a different ending to my story, so to speak.
No, that's good. And obviously for the viewers as well, I feel like it's important, like, you're actually doing that. As much as we spoke about, let's just say, having a 9 to 5, which one thing I want to make clear, we're not bashing a 9 to 5. Everyone needs somewhat of an income. And the majority of the time, a 9 to 5 is what does that. Unless you're all very fortunate to either have money straight away to go into a business venture, or you have family that have businesses, then that's great. But often, a lot of the times, you do need capital, which a lot of the times you're only going to get that money from a 9 to 5. But you, I believe, took a whole different route, which I feel like was very interesting, especially when we were speaking at the barber, at our barbers. It was more of a thing where, yes, you may have your 9 to 5, but also you do, like, you're in the property game as well.
Yeah, so I mean, like I say, for me, in terms of with property, and I definitely agree with the point in terms of, yeah, we do need that 9 to 5 and we do need that initial income.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no different to anyone else. I'm a regular guy. I've got bills, I've got a mortgage, I've got a family that obviously need to be provided for. So I wouldn't be reckless and be like, right, I'm just going to completely quit my job altogether and I'm just going to go completely. And some people do.
Yeah.
And to be fair to them, in certain cases, it does work. I'm a little bit more cautious. And to be fair, I also enjoy what I do as well. So I don't necessarily feel the need that I need to get out just right now.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, like I said, on the property standpoint, and again, that was just from just going out and just seeing what information was around. I suppose it's kind of like a lot of new nuances of things that people want to do.
Yeah.
It seemed like overnight everyone's a property expert. Everyone's doing a training course and everyone's doing these YouTube videos and telling you, yeah, you can do no money down deals and it's easy to get into. It's not.
Yeah.
It generally isn't.
Yeah.
So that, again, is kind of like sort of selling a dream and delivering a nightmare.
Yeah.
But as I say, it's like anything. The more educated you are, the more you understand certain things, the more confident you become within that realm.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm by no stretch of the imagination an expert. I'm still learning. I'm still connecting with people and trying to sort of pick their brains on particular things within property. But yeah, that definitely is the end goal, that I want it to be in a situation whereby I don't have to work.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I've got those choices. I think that's what generally the whole purpose of building a certain level of wealth is. It's that you don't necessarily think to yourself, right, I'm just going to quit everything.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not one of those people that could just literally not work and do anything.
Yeah.
I'd go stir crazy. But at the same time, I want those choices and I don't want to feel like, oh, it's Sunday night. Oh, I'm dreading I've got to wake up Monday and then do this whole thing all over again, which... obviously most people tend to.
Yeah, because I feel like most of the time you get people that literally work Monday to Friday, and then majority of, especially I think it's the UK culture as well, you just look forward to the Saturday, Sunday. Well, Saturday really, Friday and a Saturday, and then Sunday you're just laying in bed thinking, oh crap, I have work. And one thing I realized the other day, I was reading a book. I think it was Shoe Dog, the owner of Nike. He was like talking about like time and having like the importance of time. And then it came to me and I was thinking, I started watching a YouTube video that one of my mentors at the current moment, shout out Tris, by the way, Tris Taylor. He did an interview with Alfie Valentine. And he was saying, they were talking about the aspects of time and what does success mean to you. And I thought to myself, I was like, actually, success to me is actually time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The more successful you have and actually having money, it's great because you're able to, let's just say, get certain luxurious things and you're able to be more comfortable in life. But most importantly, you're able to have time, because it doesn't matter how much money you have. That's one thing you actually can't buy, if that makes sense.
100%.
So the more time you have, as you said, like the more comfortable that you're able to be, you don't have to be thinking on a Sunday, I have to spend 9 or 8 hours at a workplace, if that makes sense. And I feel like those are the things that I feel, as we said, touching back on schools, kids ain't getting like the education enough, or not even the education, but a different perspective of there's better things than a 9 to 5. Like, I feel like property, like, I wish that people in schools, do they still get speakers in schools?
Yeah.
I wish like there was like property speakers or credit scores, because I remember when I was younger, I had no clue what a credit score was. It wasn't until I remember I wanted a phone, I think iPhone started coming out. I had like some Alcatel phone. And I said to myself, I was like, yeah, I want an iPhone. I've been saving for a while. I was like, I'm going to get an iPhone. Went to Phones for You. And the guy I was like, oh yeah, can I get this phone? Picked it out and whatnot. And he was like, oh, sorry, I can't approve you. So I was like, approve. I was like, in my head, I thought it was as simple as you have the money, so you should be able to get the phone, if that makes sense. I was trying to get a contract. And he was like, oh, yeah, we can't approve you. So I was like, what do you mean? I got the money in my account. And he was like, no. He was like, your credit score.
Checks.
And I was like, he was like, your credit is like, score is too low. Like, it's non-existent for this phone. I didn't understand. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you just can't get the phone. And I remember I went back home and I didn't even ask my parents. I was just annoyed. And I was like, Googling, I was like, what's the credit score? And then I was learning up from there and I was like, wow, these things are important, but I feel like those are not explained in school.
I mean, to an extent, so kind of separate to the sort of academic subjects that obviously kids will do every day. They will have what we call PSHE, which is basically personal, social, and it's kind of talking about particular things that affect kids, but things that are not going to be assessed on. And that can be different things. So that can be internet safety, it can be understanding about grooming, about sexting, all of those things. And it's funny you should mention a point, because in schools now, they are starting to introduce a little bit of financial literacy. But it's almost like they're introducing it to say that they're exposing the kids to it, but not enough that they're going to be able to understand it. So you'll mention to the kids what a credit score is. Well, if your credit score's bad, it means that you're not going to be able to buy certain things. And that's about it. Whereas what we need to be doing is saying, right, well, this is how you improve your credit score, and debt isn't always bad. It depends on the type of debt that you've got. Good debt is definitely what you want to have. It opens doors. It allows you to be able to finance certain things. Whereas we're always told, oh, debt, if you get into debt, it's a bad thing. You're going to lose money. Bad debt, absolutely. Paying credit or using credit cards that you haven't got an income to be able to pay them off, and buying things that aren't going to produce money, 100% is bad. But if it's using debt to leverage to enable you to be able to purchase other things, property is a huge sort of example of that, where you are paying off particular things in order to get that finance to sort of expand. I mean, again, from the property side of things, we're told that what you should do is you should save money and then you should go and put a deposit down for a house. I remember for a long time I was thinking, okay, so how are these multimillionaires doing it? If they've got multiple properties in their portfolio and these houses are £300,000, £400,000, surely they're not saving each time to be able to pay for them. And again, it was only through going through certain educational realms, it was like, well, no, they're not doing that. What they're basically doing is putting a deposit down, tenanting the property, uplifting the price, because obviously properties, they're always going to, well, not always, but generally you will have capital appreciation. So you might buy a house now. At the moment, I know there's a lot of people that are scared and fearful about the kind of current situation with houses. But again, houses are always going to go up and down. Interest rates are going to go up and down.
100%.
But it's about understanding how to kind of navigate through those sorts of realms. And property, in my opinion, is definitely one of the best ways where you are able to bargain time. I want to be the situation whereby if I want to go and pick my daughter up from when she starts secondary school, I can do that. Whereas a lot of people now, it's like, oh, maybe the partner might have to do it, or you've got to make certain like sort of sacrifice to be able to do that. And I think the overall goal is to make sure that you've got those choices and those options at your disposal, really.
No, 100%, because as you said, like touching on those things, especially like in relations to schools, I feel like it's important to give kids a different idea of things that they can get into, because a lot of the times it's like when you're 15 and 16, you don't really, some people have an idea of what they want to do or what they want to get into, but the mass majority don't know what they want to do. Even up till uni, I know people that I've gone to uni with, they studied a certain course, either via parents have told them, a family member said, study this course, or they just picked a course thinking that's what they wanted to do. Halfway through, they realize, oh, like, this is not the route that I want to go into. So I feel like the more kind of variety you're able to give kids from an early like age allows them to be a bit more aware of what's out there, if that makes sense. Because property, I didn't really start understanding property until I was probably like 18. And that was only because I was one of those people, one, I like networking and I can ask like a million questions, if that makes sense. So I was always intrigued because as you said, like I was always seeing, let's just say, these millionaires and billionaires. I'm thinking, how are these guys doing this, if that makes sense? Hence why that time when I got Stephen on, especially if you guys are interested in property, make sure you go back and watch that episode. But hence why I got Steven on, because I was seeing him driving. For me, I love cars, so I was seeing him driving a Lamborghini. I was seeing him driving a Range, and I was thinking, this guy has nice cars. What is he? What does he do?
Yeah.
I remember I came across his page, and it was just property. And as you said, going down to how society's structured right now, because of inflation and the prices of everything, people that have recently taken out mortgages on houses, they're selling their houses because they can't necessarily afford it. So a lot of the times they're even selling it a bit cheaper than what they bought. And perfect example, people like Steven now are coming along. Obviously, he has the money to his disposal. He's just buying it all up because he can, renovating them, waiting for, let's just say, the prices, the housing market to increase. And he's making killing. He's making an absolute killing. And I feel like it's one of those things where, as you stated earlier, risk versus reward. Like, would I rather do the same thing for 40 years, get a capped, let's just say, salary that I know is probably not going to go higher than this amount? Or do I just take a risk, maybe put in a bit of savings or a bit of money, risk it, and then maybe have a higher reward, if that makes sense?
And that's the thing as well. It's all about, it's kind of sort of leveraging and weighing things up in their entirety. I'm a huge believer in, when you look at the term risk, it's calculated risk.
100%.
So no one's turning around and saying, right, get all your savings and just go and blow it into a venture that maybe you're not too understanding of, or that you maybe haven't got as much experience in. I mean, like, even for me personally now, with the certain capital that I'm sort of generating now, I wouldn't go 2 foot into every sort of property deal or property potential, because again, there's obviously risks that are involved. But again, it's about understanding what those risks are and sort of weighing it up in terms of the pros and cons. But just to touch on your point in regards to sort of from a schooling system, I came out of school, did crap in college, went to school, did okay in school, got to college, and it was just like, right, it's playtime now. So literally it was a case of, I'd have my lessons, but because you're in the common room, so you're seeing all the, because I went to a school with a sixth form, so you're seeing all the kids going to lessons.
That's what I did.
I'm in the common room and it's table tennis time, and it was like, right, I ain't coming off this table until I beat everyone. So I was missing lessons. Fast forward to year 13, did horrendous in college. Ended up going to uni, where I did a sports science degree, which was a 3-year course. But because my grades were so bad at college, because I went to University of Bedfordshire. So they had University of Bedfordshire, but then they also had Bedford College. But because my results were that bad, I had to do 2 years at Bedford College doing a HND, and I only got to experience the 3rd year at uni.
Oh, mad.
Came out of uni, did okay, got a 2-2, nothing to sort of shout about. Came out of uni, I was like, okay, now what am I doing? So literally, I mean, and obviously back then, uni fees were a lot different. So I say it's still a quite a big amount of money. But it was £3,000 a year for tuition fees.
I wish. Now what we paying?
9,000 for 9,000 per year. So it was like £9,000 obviously on the tuition fees that were paid. Obviously, I had to sort out certain finances to kind of get by. But then I was like, right, I've got this £9,000 debt, which, to be fair, probably will never be paid off anyway, because obviously in terms of incomes, they just take a certain small percentage out, which doesn't really hinder you. And I was like, okay, well, I'm 21, I finished uni, I've got a degree. I was coming out of uni thinking, I've got this degree, basically, who's going to take me on now? Like, I'm picking what job I want to go into and who's obviously going to employ me. But that was literally, couldn't be any further away from the truth. I mean, back then, to be fair, literally, you could get into uni with, like, the crappiest or the deadest grades and no one was saying anything, because it was almost like they were just throwing kids into uni. But now, because of the competition and whatnot, it's difficult to get into uni, but more importantly, it's more difficult in terms of employment afterwards. So I was like 21, didn't know what I was doing, literally bounced around for about 3 years, just doing little jobs here, little jobs there. And then I kind of was speaking to a friend, and they were just like, well, you enjoy sports. I had loads of experience with working in schools and colleges, like during uni, as part of my degree. I was like, okay, it kind of makes sense. Let me kind of go and see what teaching's about. Went in to do a few sort of placements. But even then, had a degree, had experience. But when I was applying for my teacher training year, I had to apply 4 years on the trot. And then I started thinking, okay, something doesn't seem to be adding up here. I've got all the qualifications. I've got all of the experience. I can't even get onto doing a teaching qualification. that's a separate agenda, but that's for a conversation for another day.
100%.
So then I was like, okay, 24, 25. And I'm thinking, right, I now need to make sure I buckle down. Got onto teaching training course, did that. And obviously here I am now in terms of teaching. But it was kind of like, that's just the example that I also give to the kids at school when I say to them, like, don't think that you have to go to uni. I'm not turning around saying that further education is bad or it's something kids shouldn't do. But I'm definitely a case of explaining to them, right, have an idea what you want to go into. If you're going to go into uni and you're going to do a generic art degree, or you're going to do a generic degree that's not going to qualify you for anything, or isn't going to give you the stepping stone to go into something else, then what's the point, in my opinion?
100%.
So it's more so a case of thinking, and that's why I try to explain to the kids, try to have a plan in place. I know that obviously all kids don't like school, don't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy all aspects. But it's about trying to explain to them that just look at it as a means to an end. You need to do this in order to get to that next place. And definitely for me, property now, for me, is that outlet. I've got the income that I can do right now. And obviously that's kind of covering my bills, my mortgage, etc. But ultimately, I want to get to a point whereby I probably will still have some kind of involvement in teaching, but maybe just not as full-time as what I'm doing now. But the only way I'm going to be able to do that is through the sort of risk, or the calculated risk, shall we say, that needs to be taken in property.
It's crazy how, like, even though we're a few years apart, it's like we've experienced the same type of uni life experience, because I think I'm in that stage similar to you in the sense of, well, that you were in, that finished uni, and a lot of my friends, a lot of the people that I hang around with are in similar situations. Like, you finish uni, you got the degree, you're thinking, when I got out, I thought I was sold the dream as, once you have a degree, you can get a job anywhere. So I came out and I was thinking, like, I wanted to get into, I think it was like digital marketing and branding and whatnot, even though I did sports management, but that's what I wanted to do because I learned a lot of things while I was doing sports management. And then I realized, I was like, hold on, I still can't get in. Like, I'm still not able to get in. And then even with my experience, so alongside with sports management, I was on the management team for the Cricket World Cup. And I was thinking, I had great things on my CV. So I was thinking, I started doing, applying for like junior events managers, like for either sporting companies. Still nothing. And I was like, hold on. And then I think I went through that phase in the sense, as you said, you bounced around to a few jobs and whatnot. And I think that's the phase that I'm in at the moment. Luckily, I'm not necessarily bouncing around like I did, what's his name? I worked for Enterprise and I was a trainee manager there. But even then, that was meant to be a graduate scheme. Didn't necessarily learn much. One of the worst jobs that I would say that I'm in, that I was in. And then, like, now I'm at Jaguar Land Rover, where the pay is great, but it's one of those things where, as you said, there's not really much progression, if that makes sense. So now I'm more of, as you said, I'm trying to look to find something that's more concrete, if that makes sense, that I can grow, learn. Actually, like I said to myself, I was like, I didn't work so hard at uni to just sit there. I said to my missus, always looks at me work. So I say to her, I'm like, I want to be doing PowerPoints. I want to be doing meetings. I want to be saying, okay, guys, this is what you need to do here. Like, I was like, that's where I see myself. I don't see myself just sitting there all day for like 9 hours.
Just being a
exactly. So as we've discussed, I feel like one thing that I can gather from this whole conversation, especially if you're a parent watching or even if you're a young teenager watching, I feel like when it comes to life, have a somewhat of a plan of where you kind of want to go. Unfortunately, life doesn't always work in your favor. A lot of the times it could be situations where things happen, like perfect example, COVID. Stuff like that can happen to kind of take you away from your path. But at the same time, if you have a certain understanding, like plot them down, do your research and weigh up your options. And if you're a parent as well, like, have those conversations with your child. Ask them, what do you like? Where do you want to go? What do you like? Where do you see yourself going? Because I feel like a lot of the times, a lot of people have present conversations, but they don't have 5-year conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that makes sense. Like with me now, sometimes my missus has to like help me like be a bit more present because I am always like I'm looking 5 years and 10 years, if that makes sense. because that, for me, that's important. I need to plan my next step, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm just coasting along, just living life each and every day, I don't feel like it's very productive.
And then I think that complacency as well can kick in. I mean, from the standpoint of goals, which obviously you just kind of mentioned there, I was reading, or I've just not long finished reading, book by Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
Like one of the richest men on the planet.
Oh, Grant Cardone.
And he's got this whole sort of philosophy, the 10x, which is literally whatever you are doing, you need to 10x it. You need to be doing 10 times more than what everyone else is doing. And then it was a case of looking at sort of goal setting, and it was a case of, yes, you're going to have your immediate goals, but ultimately you want to be having goals in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. I mean,
100%.
For me now, I mean, I'm 36 now, and I'm looking at it thinking, right, okay, what's the main milestone I want to achieve by the time I'm 40?
Yeah.
I want to be in a situation, and I look at it as definitely attainable, that by the time I'm 40, if I wanted to, I can choose to come out of full-time education. That's the kind of goal that I'm looking for, and that's basically what I'm looking to achieve. But like you said, I mean, with speaking with the younger generation, definitely try to understand in terms of what you want to do, where you want to go in life, and kind of plot. And don't let anyone kind of put you off that journey. I think we often tell people what they should be doing or where they should be.
Yeah.
Everyone's journey, everyone's path is completely different. As long as you've got an idea in terms of what you want to do and where you want to get to, then just strive for it. There are going to be hard times. There are going to be times where you kind of get knocked down, but it's about kind of like trying to have that level of resilience, and then just trying to push forward with it, really.
100%. Like, so again, like if for those that are listening, parents, kids and whatnot, like have those conversations. Very important, because that's what's gonna dictate the future you. And I always think like to myself, what would like I say to my younger self, or what would my future self want me to do now, if that makes sense. I'm a big believer, most importantly, is work hard now so you can relax later. Do the hard things now, so then that way later on it doesn't have to be so hard, if that makes sense. But it's been a great conversation, not gonna lie to you. I feel like it's been informative. I'm able to learn a lot in the sense of what's happening in the teaching world, because it can see that it's developing. I feel like there's a lot of things that still need to be improved.
Absolutely.
But at least there's somewhat of a ball put in place. But I think also it's one of those things where, you can feed a man for a day or something. What's the thing?
I think the saying is you can feed a man, something to do with in terms of the numbers.
You can. What's the thing?
Yeah.
Oh, the donkey one. You can feed the.
You can take a donkey to water.
Yeah,
you can't force them to.
Can't force it. So I feel like it's down as well to the individual to want to learn more, take it upon themselves. I feel like this thing right here, very important. It's not just for social media, Instagram. You literally have every single thing there at your disposal. 100%. So if you want to learn things, you want to find out about different questions and whatnot, literally Google it. All the information is there. But thank you again for coming on. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for
for those that are watching and you still haven't subscribed for what reason, I have no clue. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and even let me know your perspective on the video as well. Comment down below. But thank you very much. It's been Get Back season. Tune in for our next episode. I'm in the middle of trying to get someone quite special on. So you guys just have to bear with me. But yeah, subscribe.
This is Get Back season, baby.